Welcome to Season 2 of Compassionate Cultures, the podcast. I'm your host, Rebbecca Hemmings, and in this short but powerful season, we're tackling the big topics leading with cultural humility, racism, discrimination, and a deep dive into sexual harassment in the workplace. If you're a leader or HR professional who wants to create a safer, more inclusive environment, you're in the right place. Now, let's get started. Welcome back to the Crafting Compassionate Cultures podcast. I'm your host, Rebbecca Hemmings. And so today, we're going to dive into a topic that's often misunderstood with regards to sexual harassment. Very important. So what we're doing is debunking myths about sexual harassment. And sexual harassment, it's a pervasive issue. Just think about how many times you've heard about a sexual harassment case in the news recently. So I can think of recently hearing about the former president of Spain's Football Federation, Luis Rubiales, when he kissed the female player Jenny Hermoso on the lips without permission. You know, now he's facing jail time. There's P. Diddy and all that's going on. Last year was, or was it the year before, Mohammed Al Fayed, the CEO of Harrods, and the horrific sexual treatment he subjected many of his employees to. You know, there's so many cases that I could mention. But I won't. I mean, all you need to do is to simply Google sexual harassment news, and you will be inundated with examples of sexual harassment. And one of the reasons why, I mean, there's so many reasons as to why this happens, but one of the reasons why it's such a pervasive issue is because there are many myths around sexual harassment which are allowed to go unchecked. And so what I want to do is I want to talk about some of those myths today. This will be quite a short episode, and I want to debunk those myths, because when we don't do that, when we don't challenge these myths, it can lead to, victim blaming, where people make the assumption that person, a person on the receiving end, is responsible for their own treatment, or for causing problems, or for being disruptive. It can lead to harmful assumptions which are not true, but it can lead to harm for a particular person. And they can also prevent people from speaking up, because if you think that by saying something, people are not going to believe you or going to treat you badly as a result of you saying something, you just might not say anything at all. And unfortunately, it's a very common occurrence. So let's work towards debunking the myths, so that we can get a little bit closer to having workplaces where sexual harassment isn't a thing. All right. Before we dive into the myths, I just want to talk about give you a few other reasons as to why this matters, right? So sexual harassment isn't just about inappropriate behavior. It's also about power dynamics, which we don't often discuss. It's about having cultures that are respectful and creating environments where people feel safe. So if we have all those things in place, we're far less likely to have sexual harassment, okay? But when myths do persist, as I said, they can silence victims, and they can normalize behaviors, all right? And of course, they can put organizations at risk, all right? Do we want to talk about the recent Worker Protection Act? No, because I've done so in previous episodes, and I'll continue to talk about it. But, with stricter penalties for organizations that prevent sexual harassment, it's more important than ever that we squash myths, all right? So, okay, let's start talking about these myths. First one, false reports are common. So false reports of sexual harassment are common. So, often people will say, oh, no, she's lying. It's usually a woman, can be a man, but usually a woman, she's lying, or, that wouldn't happen. And I think, again, it is similar to other forms of discrimination, where there's a desire to almost equalize who subjects others to harmful behavior. So women are just as bad as men, they lie. But actually research shows that only 1%, there's only 1% of complaints are false. I know you're enjoying the episode, but this is really quick. At Strawberry Words, we help organisations to create safer workplaces with our CPD accredited online sexual harassment course. Designed for leaders and staff, it equips learners with the tools to prevent, address and challenge harassment effectively. Check it out now on www.strawberrywords.co.uk. Now back to your episode. Okay. And so again, this myth is very dangerous because it discourages victims from coming forward. If they think they're going to be accused of lying, they're far less likely to say something. You know, can you imagine being traumatized and then wanting justice to be done, but then realizing, oh no, I remember when so-and-so said something, or when other people said something and they were treated so badly, I can't deal with that. And so they say nothing. That's got to be a really horrible position to be in. All right, myth number 2, sexual harassment is just about unwanted romantic or sexual advances. You know, I think when people were first learning about sexual harassment, this was the kind of way in which they thought it happened, is that in that somebody was trying to chat somebody up, or, you know, which of course, yes, if it's unwanted, that can also be deemed as sexual harassment, but it's far more than that, okay? You know, sexual harassment, it includes unwelcome jokes, unwanted touching or inappropriate touching and gestures, and it includes making stereotypical gender-related comments such as, you know, all women are emotional, therefore they're not equipped to be leaders, or even making inappropriate jokes about man boobs and all sorts, which again, people may find funny, but certainly in a workplace context, it's not okay. It's not okay, you know? And so it's not just about romance or a lack of, it's about respect and it's about boundaries, all right? So unfortunately, we do live in a system or a society that does support or normalize these sorts of comments and behaviors, and we just have to be educated enough to know that that's not okay. All right, I'm just going to do one more. Misgendering someone isn't a big deal. It can't be considered sexual harassment. So, you know, somebody, for instance, prefers to be called he, him instead of or she, her instead of he, him. You know, we have to respect that. And it can be classed as sexual harassment, okay? Because remember, sexual harassment is unwanted behavior of a sexual nature. Now, sexual nature is not just to do with the act, but it's also to do with gender, okay? So, as I said, this is a very, very quick episode, and I hope that helps. It's really important to challenge these myths for all the reasons that I mentioned. And so what I'd say, how you can start by making a change today is by sharing this episode. For one, share it with colleagues, listen to it in a meeting, for instance, a DEI group meeting, human ERG, whatever it might be. But also continuing to educate yourself, continuing to be aware of and listen to often normalized statements, which are quite often gender related, which could be classed as sexual harassment, okay? Because I'm forewarning you so you can be forearmed, okay? Is that the statement? I don't know. Anyway, I'm done. I'm tired. Thank you so much for listening. And don't forget, we can help if your organization requires training around sexual harassment. We do have our Understanding Sexual Harassment in the Workplace CPD accredited course, and we can also deliver that face-to-face. So do get in touch if that's something that you're interested in. All right, thank you so much, and until next time, keep crafting those compassionate cultures. Bye-bye.